Welcome to the second episode of the Back Page podcast. My name is Mark McGoldrick, and in this special podcast series, which is being brought to you in association with the Balmore Court and Motel in Enniskillen, we'll be celebrating the careers of some of Fermanagh's leading sports stars. For this episode, I sat down with Brian Hoy, the 2022 Junior World Rally Championship co-driver of the year. The 33-year-old Monea man has enjoyed great success in the sport, but he was badly injured in a crash last year.
We always knew that there was a danger to getting into the car, but you never thought it was going to be you, like. But
After spending 3 months in hospital, Brian has made a good recovery and he's determined to stay involved in a sport he has loved since he was a young boy.
I was trembling when I got home with excitement, and we'd done nothing. Like, we just went up the road and back down, and that was had to get going again then. And once we done the first rally, I was hooked. Football was no good after that. Like.
Brian Hoy, welcome to the Backpage podcast. This is a special one for me this week, and to give the audience some background, we're first cousins, and Brian's someone that I've always looked up to in terms of what he's achieved in sport and in his professional and business career. How has things been, Brian?
For a start, I suppose it's good to be here, Mark, and yeah, things are good. It's grand. We're getting on all right. We're just keeping our head above the water. And you talk there about being first cousins. It's not that way long since we were kicking the ball again the side of a hay shed at Nanny's, and now you're interviewing me across the table. Like, it doesn't be long gone by, but no, it's grand. It's everything's going all right. Yeah, happy enough.
Good memories.
Oh, aye.
And I suppose, as many will know, last year was difficult for you. You were involved in an accident during a rally, but it's great to see that you're recovered again and back to full health.
Okay, look, there's no secret. We were in an accident on the 26th or 27th of April it was, and I was in hospital for just short of 3 months, and it was slow, but look, whenever we got out of hospital, the recovery was fast enough, and the people that was looking after me and all, you couldn't fault them, like, and everything that I was told to do, I done, and now we're this length, so it's not too bad. But I know at the time it was a struggle, and there was plenty of concern, but we got over it. That's just part and parcel of the rally, and I suppose we always knew that there was a danger to getting into the car, but you never thought it was going to be you, like, but that was the way it went.
And you're a very well known and popular member of the community, and during the time of the accident and the aftermath, you received massive support and well wishes, and I'm sure that meant a lot to you and to your family.
Oh, it did, surely. I didn't, in the immediate aftermath of it, I hadn't a phone. I didn't even have a phone for nearly 2 months. Like, I was being contacted unless the nurse came and told me something. I didn't have any contact with anybody. But it was funny because the people that had been supporting me very closely when we were doing well at rallying was also there to support you whenever you really needed them, then whenever you weren't well. Like, and there was people that I had hardly even met before I started rallying was nearly the people that was first there to help me. You know, and going back to the accident, like the day it happened, the first two boys on the scene was Callum Divine and Barry McNulty. They were running 30 seconds behind us in the rally, and they were the first two there. So when I kind of came round, opened my eyes, and the two of them boys were standing there, and that was massive comforting, you know, to have them boys there from the very start. But it was always boys that was people that was close to you in the good times. It was nice to see they were still with you in the time when you needed them, you know. But all the support was great. Everybody that I needed, and people that I never even thought would have been, you know, passing any remarks. There was people around me, boys that was doing rallies in Donegal 60 years ago, was on the phone to me. My phone was ringing random numbers every day, and I was putting the phone down just thinking, shit, where did that boy get my number? I never knew that boy knew who it was, but it was good, the support was, but it was all needed, but it was all much appreciated, and it definitely was.
Yeah. And going back to where it all started, where did your love of motorsport and rallying come from?
I remember the very start. I was only very, very young. I might have been 8 or 9, maybe at the most. And we used to work with an uncle of ours on a Saturday. Myself, my father, and Martin Hoy. And we were working in Monea one day, and I remember we were caring a house, and it was up on it was high ground, and I could hear the noise, and I could hear my father and Martin chatting about what's all the rallying on. And I remember saying, what's that, or what is it? All them boys up rallying about that forest, and then the chat kind of developed, and then I got him talked into bringing me to one. So once I seen it, that was it. I was hooked. But up to that, I had never knew that my father really was into rallying. Maybe he was trying to keep me away from it. I don't know. But that was the first memory I ever had of rallying being mentioned in our house.
And obviously we have talked a lot, and one person you mentioned was the late Brian McGoldrick, a very well known figure in local motorsport, and he was a close friend of your father. So would you have heard a lot about his exploits and other people when you were growing up?
I suppose before that, probably not. But then whenever I got into rallying and my father was coming with me, and then he was meeting boys, he'd say, "There's a boy there, I haven't seen that boy in 20 years," and then they'd be up and they'd be talking about, "Do you remember when we used to?" And then of course whenever I was going home, I was asking them, what was that about, and what was that day, and the laws was more relaxed them days, and they were messing about in cars on the road and all the stories that went with it. And then you start to realise that Brian McGrath, untimely, he was killed, but he was a very good, would have been a great clubman driver, And then even people that I would be chatting there now, and you'd say I was actually named after Brian McGrath. That he's 34 years, I think it is, dead now this year. So it's a long time ago. But there's his name's still about, and it's still nice to be that we're maybe carrying the name on a wee bit,
And how did you get involved in the role of the navigator, or by doing pace notes then?
I suppose, first of all, the very first time I was in a rally car was with Paul McShay on St Angelo Airfield, and my mother used to bring me sisters till I think it was Gades in Derryloney, and we always brought Paul McShay's daughter Lauren to the Gades, and then if you were ever, we always used to bring her home, and maybe the door would be open all night, and you'd see the rally car peeping out, and of course I had to get out and get a look at it and all. And this one night, he was working at it, and he says, "I'm going for a spin, do you want to go?" And I got a spin up the road, and sure, I'd never seen anything. Like, when you look back now, we probably weren't even going that fast. They were only testing something out, but it was the noise, and it's so different to sitting in a road car, and it was just, I just went home. I was trembling when I got home with excitement, and we'd done nothing. Like, we just went up the road and back down, and that was, had to get going again then. And then he got him talked into letting me sit with him in St Angelo on the airfield, but there was no pace notes with that, But I remember his wife was always saying that this cub should not be doing this, that this is not the way this cub needs to go in life. And sure, once we done the first rally, that was it. I was hooked. Football was no good after that.
Yeah, and to mention the Paul McShay, and I'm sure there were so many other local drivers, and that would have been a big learning experience in them early years of getting in and getting involved and seeing what it was like.
It was the first pace notes I ever called was with Darren McGrath in the Clubman stages in the autumn. It was based out in Lochnavar, and I remember taking off that morning, and I thought that I was going to be the next Nicky Grist, who sat with Colin McRae, and a new watch, new suit, had new everything, and we were running towards the back of the field, and I just thought there was nothing like this, but then it didn't take long there was always a demand for navigators, always was, and then I sat with the likes of Neil Harn, Peter Jennings, all them was just local working men, but then your profile starts to get a wee bit better, and then ultimately it ended up where it ended up, but no, them local boys was always, they would support you, and if you had your wits about you, they would give you a chance. That was the big thing about all them boys, But still, them boys gave me a chance when I had no experience. So you have to appreciate that, they were putting the their luck was in my hands too, like, so. But no, it was all them ways. There were good times sitting with all them ways, like, and you just went and done your rally and came home. It was a great time.
This episode is proudly supported by Belmore Court and Motel, Northern Ireland's original motel offering a true home from home in the Fermanagh Lakelands. From the trails and lakes to cheering on our incredible local sporting talent, we believe looking after what matters. Our guests, our community and our environment is always worth celebrating. Find your perfect stay at motel.co.uk.
You mentioned the new suit and the watch and all. You obviously got plenty of support from home when you did decide this was something you wanted to get involved in.
Oh, aye, sure. My mother just said, sure, whatever. Sure, you could be at worse, like. And sure, my father thought this was great that I was rallying. Sure, anywhere we went, he was there, like, and you know, it was great times. We were local for the first maybe 2 or 3 years, but it didn't take that long until we were doing the bigger rallies. You know what? All the sport was always there, and even all my uncles, Gary, all them boys there was always into rallying, and maybe not on the scale that I had got to, but they were always behind you to support you. Like.
And I suppose a big breakthrough for you was your involvement with Callum Divine, and you had some great success winning in the likes of Donegal and in Cork, and obviously going on to the European Championship. So how did you really get involved with Callum, or how did that come about?
Callum had no navigator for, I think it was the Cork 20 rally the previous year that I had sat with him, and I met him at a forestry rally, and I didn't know who he was and he didn't know who I was, and we were just chatting. And to come back to Paul McShea, I had worked for Paul McShea in the summertime when we were wiring houses for Callum Divine's father in Benelek, and I had kind of knew them, and then that was a good way to get in. You know, when the chat got up, I said to them, you know, I was actually on your houses with Paul McShea, and not that I was only sweeping up, like, but it was there, and it kind of got them chatting, and like that's how a lot of doors open up. Well, at that time especially, you know, he had nobody else to go with him, and he said to me, well, I'm stuck, do you want to go? And now if you were no good, you'll not get another chance, but you got your first chance, and I mean, you had to make the most of it. And then I didn't go to the Cork 20, I kept in touch with him then, and he said he had no navigator for Galway. If you want to come to Donegal for a day, we'll do a day of recce practice. If I'm happy with you, I'll take you to Galway, and that's how it all got going for us. Like, and then that ended up, we done the Irish Championship a couple of years, we done a couple of rounds of the British Championship, and then 2019, we won the Harvest in 2019, Donegal Harvest in 2019, and then we got a chance under John Coyne to go to the last round of the European Championship, which was in Hungary, and it was a real mess of a rally. It's a day like it is out there today, rain and wet, and it was like a full rally around Loch Navarre. That's what it meant to me. It was all wet and damp and foggy and all, and we ended up third overall, and like that was like, he was a nobody in terms of European rally before that. And then the next thing it was, who's this boy, like, or where did he come out of? And we had a great weekend that weekend. But then he got a full drive the next year in the European Championships. I didn't go with him now till it, but then he came back to do Irish rally, and then that was when we won the Cork 20, and we won the Donegal Harvest again. I think that's correct. And the Tour of the Sperrins, and we had good times that them next couple of years. He was in the best machinery, and we got on well, mate. We definitely did. And
just when I think back, I was probably starting here at the time, and you were one of the people I was following in the early part of my sports career in journalism, so it was really action packed then for you. You were in a lot of races and a lot of rallies, and I'm sure it was enjoyable.
At that time, like, there was a hell of a lot less on my plate. Like, the business wasn't going as well as it is maybe now, and I had no family, I had no girlfriend, no nothing at the time, and it was just, if I wanted to go away somewhere on a Friday morning, I had to consult with myself, and that was it. As long as I had somebody to work for us, we just went, and that was it. I remember there was one Thursday, a fella, Aidan Ray, rang me, a fella from Strabane, and he wanted to do a rally in Antrim, but we had to go on the Friday. And I remember ringing my father and saying, here, I'm not about tomorrow or Saturday, so basically good luck. I wasn't asking, I was keen to tell them. And he's like, this is the 9th weekend in a row now, like half this has to be curtailed, but that was kind of how I was trying to make a name for myself that time. We were flat out rallying, just that was all that was interesting me, was work from Monday to maybe Thursday, and then flat out rallying the rest of the time, and that's where I wanted to be at that time.
And you enjoyed brilliant success with Divine, and then John Armstrong came down the line, and you've went on to massive experiences with him. How did that connection start?
I suppose, again, he, as I said before, he had nobody to go with him, and at that time there was probably boys trying to demand, everybody knew the quality of the driver John Armstrong was, but there was boys trying to demand money off him and wages off him, which was no secret John didn't have it, and he would have had a budget to go rallying at a high level, but not to pay a navigator and to do all them things. And I got a call from a good friend of mine, William Evite, and he said, John Armstrong's looking at a navigator, do you want to go? And this was just out of the blue. It was actually around this time of the year because it was before Rally Sweden, and Sweden was maybe 3 weeks away, and I had done no rallying at the time for maybe 12 months, and I said, look, I'm not in shape, I'm nowhere near the weight I need to be, this isn't going to work. And this is a big opportunity. And I was like, this at the time it was 5 events out of the year, but it was 5 10-day spells away, and he says, this was a Thursday night late, and he said, you have until 12 o'clock Friday to make your mind up. And I said, oh Lord, I don't know what to say, I'll have to sleep on it. And I remember I walked up the stairs and I said to Aoife, I'm after getting the call to go to do 5 rounds of WRC, what do you think? And I remember she said, oh well, whatever you think. And I said, right, I'm going. That was it. It was the best decision I ever made. And it turned into, we done Sweden. Sweden was the first round, we won Sweden. Then before the next round in Croatia, we were in Azores, and we were flying in it until the car gave up on us. But that time but the commitment, the level of commitment, it was clear to see that he was going to end up where he's ended up today, because he was just something else. He was the talent and the organisation, and he was definitely an immense driver. Definitely was.
And I suppose for people watching in, they know the commitment that's involved, but when you're getting ready for them big rallies at the iconic venues, how much preparation goes into it and planning and stuff?
I always noticed, especially for them bigger rallies, you get out of it what you put into it. If you go and don't do any preparation, you don't get the reward well, maybe not the reward, but you don't get the full experience out of it. You're always doubting yourself, or you're not that confident and all the rest. But the bottom line is, them big rallies is probably easier done. Like a World Championship event, there is document upon document, there's documents for everything. There's nothing left to chance. And if a sign-on room was here, Belmore Street, Enniskillen, that's where it is. There's no doubt. It's not, we got the wrong street, it's on Fort Hill Street. It is so perfect, and as long as you take time to read and follow the updates and all, but the amount of work that goes into it is weeks and weeks and weeks of reading and thinking and plotting and looking at maps and just looking at wee roads and stuff that you'd think is, if you looked at a map of Enniskillen, you'd see that you can come in the Shore Road, and looking from a paper map, you can drive straight up the town and come to here, but you can't, because it's a one-way street. Stuff like that there, and the confidence that gives the driver, that when you land in the town and you can say, no, you have to go this way here, because that's a very congested area, and then they know this boy has done his homework here, and he knows where he's at, and then you start to gel well. But it didn't take me and John too long to gel. I met him in the airport I think we flew first of all to Helsinki, and then we flew maybe to Stockholm it was, but he was from Kiesh, I was from Enniskillen, but we had maybe spoke once in our lives face to face before that, and I remember walking alongside him and I was thinking, I don't know if me and this way is that much in common, and we probably didn't, but what he didn't know I knew, and what I didn't know he knew, and it just worked. We just got on so well, and everything was just clicked for us. I remember the first stage of Sweden, I had never drove like anytime we were driving here in snow, it was a 20 mile an hour, like, and he got into the car that day and he just went as hard as he could go, and at the end I was just stunned, and he just said to me, he says, "Bet you never seen that done before," and I just couldn't believe it, like, and it just from that, he said, I said to him as the notes, house notes, he said, "Don't repeat them, if I can't hear them I'll ask you." I said, "That's no bother," and I thought about it the whole way up the road, thinking, well, if he doesn't want them repeated, I'll not repeat them, and I didn't, and it was just, there was only half of the words said in the next stage because I was only saying them once, so it was just so simple, and we came to the end of the next one and he shook my hand and he says, that's the way I want the notes read, is that not so simple?" And I said, so it was just like sitting on the sofa, like, and it was that weekend especially, like, we won that rally by 2 seconds, 2 point something seconds, and it was like there was nothing in it, like by the time I got to the door 8 or 2 seconds passed, like, and it was deadly over whatever 320 kilometers I think it was, for 2 seconds your foot slipped off the brake, that's the time gone, like, but it was some experience, yeah.
And just when you mentioned that's such a fascinating insight into just saying the notes once, so he must have a massive trust in you, and then you obviously had to trust him as well that things were going to go good.
It was just, we'd never been with each other before, and I didn't know, maybe sometimes the other drivers that I was with would have expected the note maybe 3 times, and that was the way it was, and that's the way I done it. But he said, if I don't hear it the first time, I'll just say repeat, but I'll never question you. And it was hard for me to get into my head when he's coming flying up the corner and you're wondering did he hear me, but he definitely did. And once you start to trust that, and when you go back to look at the in-cars, that you can follow it so much easier, because I'm saying it once, he's picking it up once. It was like a computer game, just, the note was called once, the driver interpreted it, that was it, done. It was definitely but he had his own way of working, he had his own way of doing everything, and once you got into his wee system, he was like any of them other drivers that I'd been with, and me myself at the time, if I was going anywhere, say for something to eat in the evenings, I'd just park as close to the door of the place and get out. He picked the car park and then went to the car park. It didn't matter if you had to walk 10 minutes. And I used to say, why could you not just park on the street? No, that's not the way I operate. And you park in the car park, you got your ticket and went to the restaurant. There's nothing's left it out. There's not, it's just a different way of working. But look where it's got him. He's at the top flight of rallying now and thoroughly deserves to be there.
And again, during that time, you received massive support, and a lot of our family went over to support you. And I suppose just comes into my mind, there's a great picture of an uncle of ours, John Hoy, and he was flying the Fundraising flag in Portugal, maybe could have wore a bit more clothes and stuff, but it got a massive reaction. And to have the support from your family and friends was massive during that time.
It was, and especially out there, like we had done Sweden, Azores, Croatia, and maybe one other rally, Gran Canaries. That was 4 long distance rallies, and there was nobody from Ireland there. But I knew them boys was coming, and we had a crash in the Canaries rally, and then we flew directly from there to Portugal to do the next rally, and I was never as glad to see them coming plodding along, like my father and John and Declan McGee and Gary and Aoife and Barry McNulty and Marty Leonard. They were all there, and it got then that I loved being able, but even simple stuff like after the rally, after the end of the day service, or even in the midday service, you got to lie up again a post and chat to them about something that was going on at home, something that was totally irrelevant to the rally, but it brought you back, it settled you, and knowing that they were there, and they had the time of their lives that week, like it was deadly. And sure, the picture of him with the flag was just the tin hat and the whole thing, and they just loved to talk about that. Actually, Marty Leonard was in the shed with me this morning, and he was talking about Rally Portugal, and that's 4 years ago now, and he's still talking about Rally Portugal that year. And sure, that's what we always said. We never seemed to talk about the local rallies that was done. It was always the big far away ones that took a week to get and that was them that always lasts in your memory,
And one aspect people might not think about is the financial side of it, and along with the support you already had before the final round in Greece, there was a big fundraising night in cash, and that was massive to get the support from the community for that.
Okay, it was whenever I John's career was always well documented, that he was always on a shoestring, like, and that was one question I asked him before Sweden: is the finances in place? And everything's agreed. So I took the word for it and went on. And I remember maybe we got to Portugal, was the third round that year. Yeah, and there was 2 more to go, and he kind of says things is going to be tight, and that was the first. And I said, what do you mean tight? And he said, well, we've kind of overstepped the budget. And I said, well, how? And he said, oh look, it just mightn't have all been there at the start. And I said, oh, not so bad. And I said, what do you think? And he says, Croatia's going to be tight, but if we could get he was always a great optimist, you know, if we could get a good result in Croatia, it'll get us on to the next one. Then that was Estonia. We got lit, and then after Estonia, we were late, and we had to come up with some sort of a plan. And not to be kind of selfish, but I used to say to them, look, I'm not doing this for any reward. I'm not doing this for any nothing, only for an interest at that time. And it's not my problem if you don't have the money, whatever. But then he was that good of a driver, and that it was that big of a chance. We went out. Barry McNulty took us out on the boat one night, and we all sat and just said, what are we going to do? Like, what we need to come up with something. And they said, if a fundraiser is run right, it's the way to go. And especially in rallying, them things is all as well supported, you know. And we got Gary Jennings put us on to, he got us the venue and all the infrastructure, and called in a couple of favours, and the money that that got us over the line. Like, that got us, it was over 50 grand the raise, I think, and that got us to Greece then we actually got enough to do a test. Another way through the fundraiser sponsored us a test in Poland on the way to Greece. So we went to Poland first. This fella owned a quarry, and he gave us a car for 2 days testing, and then we went on to Greece then, and that made it wouldn't have happened at all only for that fundraiser. But even without the money aspect of it, it was a great experience, you know, organising it all, getting everybody together. And there was I'd say there was 250 or 300 people in the car park in the back of the Mayfly. Like, every time I drive in there now, I take a look around and think, do you remember the night we had Andrew Nesbitt standing on a table with a pair of pink trousers on him, being an auctioneer? Like, it was, like, for the first prize, they drove a jeep in and let a sheep out. Like, it was a made time. We got a great spell of weather for it, and it just all worked out. And it was a mighty time. It definitely was.
Yourself and John finished runner-up, and you went on then to win the co-driver championship title. So what did it feel like when all it died down? How would you have summed it up?
I suppose it was like everything else in life. It's all about timing, and it was just a stroke of luck that one of the other drivers, Robert Verves, had changed his navigator during the year. So his navigator, who had gathered up a couple of points at the start of the year, he was at home. He had took another girl with him, Julia, and she scored the points for the last half of the season. But even though he won the rally and won the championship, his navigator didn't win. So I won. But I knew all along the weekend that was the case. But I never said anybody until it was over. But John would have knew as well. And I suppose the celebrations was different. We came to the end of the stage, and the end of the stage was in the middle of the wilderness somewhere in Greece, and we came back down to the service area, and I remember Craig Breen and Paul Nagel was both standing there waiting on us, because I was the first Irish world champion in a long time at that time, and they were standing congratulating me. And then we went out on a boat that night. The boat went out of somewhere, I don't know where it was, but it was more for the whole team and all the young Polish mechanics and all, they were all there. But it was kind of surreal enough, because unless you looked on your phone, there was no real celebrating, because there was only, all the boys that I had said was with us at the rally, and my father, John, were all there again, and we were all sitting on this boat. It was a yoke like the Kester, and we were just sitting on her, and there was nothing swanky about it, and we got a bit of food, and we went home to where we were staying that night, again, top of a mountain somewhere, and that was it. But then whenever we got home, we had a night and then a skilling, and it was really, look, there's still people talks about it, and it was a great time. It definitely was a thing in the town hall and all that went with it. But no, it was nice to get some sort of recognition for everything that had went on for the last 10 years, you know, that had worked up to that. But then there was opportunities to go to do it full time, and I had to make a decision: was it the business that I had tried to build up, or was it the rallying career that I wanted? And did I really want to be travelling all over the world? And I had other fellas, the likes of Aaron Johnson and all them boys, I had asked all them fellas, you know, all the questions that I know they didn't really want to be asked, but I'd asked them anyhow, because it was the only way of finding out, like, and I just made my decision that I wasn't going to follow it, to go full time at it, you know, but I'd try and keep me hand in a wee bit, but always had this great aspiration that I wanted to win Donegal. Always had this in my head since the first time I got to Donegal. I wanted to win this rally, and last year I had got the call from, I wasn't doing a Wild Big Pilot rallying at the start of last year, got the call from Chris Meek, and I remember exactly where it was when he phoned, and I could hardly stand up, but I had already sat with him since that in the Portuguese Championship, and he said I've got an opportunity to do Donegal and he doesn't do anything by half. It was a top car, top team, best tyres, all the rest. And then I said, you know what, I'll go and do Donegal, but I haven't been in a car in maybe 12 months, so I'll do Cavan Rally with Jennings first, and then we'll move on to Donegal, which by the time I woke up, Donegal was over nearly, so that was the end of that. It just wasn't meant to be, but that was just the way it went.
And I suppose, just going back a wee bit, you mentioned obviously Craig Breen, and I suppose throughout your career you've made so many friendships, and you know, you got to experience things with really great people involved in the sport.
But sure, that's anything that I always tended to start. I always had to try and get to the top or be the best and get in with the best people, whatever. But them boys, you know, people sees all them boys that's in the media and always, and unfortunately Greg, he's gone now, but they're just normal men. Like, you know, I went to Monte Carlo to do a snow crew one year, 2023 it was, with me and John Armstrong went to do it, and he was there, he was doing the recce just, and we went for a feed and a couple of drinks one evening. It was just sitting around a wee bar, and there was only maybe 4 or 5 of us, and they're just normal people, but they just do stuff extraordinary. Like, and John Armstrong's the same now. Like, you know, he's just a normal man he's going to make a big impression this year. Like, and he's just a normal fella that can walk up in a skill and nobody really talked to him. He's just a normal man that does something exceptionally well. Like,
when people think about motorsport, probably the first thing they think of is the driver, but how big of a role does that navigator or co-driver play in like the preparation, supporting the driver, and even after the rally and stuff?
I suppose it's as big as you want it to be. You can take on as much as you want or as little as you want. You can just do the basics, like call the notes, but you want to look after. I wouldn't like to be going to a rally not knowing what is lying ahead of me, and then whenever you do study it, there may be something that the driver might need to know, or the conditions, or maybe you be chatting to somebody that's done the rally before and you might pass that information on to the driver. The navigator, it is a very important job. Like, some people would naively say to you, gosh, you're only sitting in the passenger seat, like, and I'd like them to go and sit and do what we do to go and see, experience it, like, but no, it is an important role, it definitely is, and it's nice whenever, before the driver might trust you, the times might be great, but whenever it starts to gel and you start to work together, then the times on the stages will improve, and you kind of know that that's thanks to you, you know, and it mightn't be always said, but it is nice to get that, you know yourself, you can gauge where it's going, and as long as it's going the right way, sure, that's the main thing.
Yeah, and Fermanagh had its fair share of motorsport stars and people who've gone on to achieve massive things, and from you were growing up and getting involved the first time to now, how big is the sport grown in the county?
Well, I suppose the most notable local driver up to now would have been Bertie Fisher, like, and that would have been nearly before my time, but even for a small county, the amount of rallying people and fraternity that is in the county there's always somebody. I couldn't walk up to town now but I'd see somebody that I've seen that boy at a rally, or I know that boy's cub rallies, but others, sure, even from local club men right up till you had Alistair Fisher then and Gary Jennings and all them right up to John Armstrong, like he's at the pinnacle now, and that does help. You know, everybody's talking now. People that might never mention rallying to you, they're saying now, I seen that fella. You know, it brings the grade of the sport up in people's minds. You know, whenever they can see that somebody from here is at the very top, it just kind of makes it makes the world a lot smaller to them. You know, that they could maybe do it. If this man could do it, why could nobody else do it? You know.
What advice would you give to a young person now who's hoping to get involved, whether that be as a driver or as a navigator?
Well, I suppose I couldn't really give much driver's advice, but if you're going to be a driver, you probably need plenty of money or know somebody that has. But no, from navigating, I found you need to speak to everybody. Everybody that you see at the rallying, speak to them, talk to them. You do not know who you're talking to, what door it's going to open. You mightn't necessarily have to be the best navigator in the world, but as long as you know the best people, you'll get to the top or you'll get to the right place. But you will need to be committed and organised. That's a big thing. You can't be a scatterbrain when you're a navigator. You can't be going about forgetting stuff for that. But if you work out a wee system that you can be organised, or that you understand, nobody else needs to understand. As long as you understand it, there was some stuff that I done that people used to say, sure, there's easier ways of doing that. And I said, but hold on, I can understand that quick, and that's the way I'm doing it, and it worked for me anyway.
And as you've mentioned, just on from the accident, you're married now, and you've you're a father to a beautiful wee girl, Tess, but you're still going to keep an eye on the motorsport, and you'll be there to give advice if needed.
Married to, rather not get this wrong, a year and a bit in November there, and had my wee girl Tess. She's just 12 months there last Sunday, and probably one of the sorest things about being in the accident was not being able. I didn't see her for nearly 2 months, and she was only 3 months old at that time, and when I got out, I couldn't lift her. But then she was only a very young baby at that time. It mightn't have been so important to her, but now, sure, she's the centre of attention now. She's very, very soon going to be the boss. So she'll be the boss, and then there'll be Aoife, and then there'll be Brian. So I'll be third in command. Then that's going to be a big problem. But no, here you wouldn't change it for the world. We have a good wee family there. We definitely have, and I'll not run away from rallying. I've planned to go and do some gravel notes with different boys, and I'm going to do a bit of recce support with Callum McGoldrick now in a couple of weeks, and for all the legs, not that you don't be trying to repay a favour, but all them boys was good to me whenever I needed them, and even before that, whenever I was rallying. So you don't want to run away from any of that either. And look at us, that's rallying's a part of my life, and you can't change that, and you just can't stop them things. There's nothing more than I'd love to be getting in a car beside John Armstrong, but that's just not the way it's going to be. But you have to. There's bigger things in my life now than rallying, and Tess, he's one of them.
Brian, that was a fascinating chat, and for me it was a great privilege to sit down with you, so thank you for joining us.
No bother, anytime, Mark.